Greetings. Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Yeah, we're always really amazed by the amount of registrants that we have signing up for these webinars. What did I say, Candacy? We were at like 52 or something, but not everybody
Yes.
always can attend live. So that's fine. We are happy to do our portion of everything. And then we always send out a recording when the session is over to anybody who wasn't able to attend live, because sometimes that's what happens, right? You're in the middle of lunch, you can't make it live, but at least you're registered and you're supporting us in that way. So welcome those of you who are here. I'm actually not going to wait any longer because people will trickle in. So let's get started with our webinar. Bear with me one sec just to pull up some of these things on screen here and get my little window out of the way. So welcome to everybody for joining us. Thank you so much for coming to yet another one of these free monthly wellness webinars. We are always so happy to have you join us, like I said, either live in person here where I can see your names and your faces, or after the fact, just supporting us and registering for these on a month-by-month basis. We've really tried to provide you with a variety of topics over the last couple of years that we've been doing this, and we are so grateful that you find this beneficial. So this month's webinar ties into National Nutrition Month, which is a campaign created by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics every March. And this year's theme is Celebrate a World of Flavors. So before we officially launch into our formal introductions, let's just review some housekeeping items. On screen here, you can see this is, and you probably heard the announcement come as you were coming in, that this is a recorded session because we record everything and then we give you the link to it later if you were unable to attend in person or came in late. You're automatically muted as far as mics are concerned. You're automatically, your cameras are automatically turned off, but you can feel free to turn your cameras on if you want to. We'll do a Q&A session at the end of our webinar, but you can always put information in the chat if you want to. And I'm also in charge of admitting people as they enter, because we didn't do a password protected thing. We just did a waiting room thing today. So bear with me as I'm playing multi roles behind the scenes here. We also want to make sure, for those of you who've been to this before, we always try to tell you and disclaim, this is not medical advice, right? Everything that we're sharing with you, while we are in the healthcare profession, while I am a credentialed dietitian, I am not your dietitian. So please be sure that you're taking all of this with a, no food pun intended, grain of salt. And be sure also to get medical clearance whenever you are making any kind of adjustments or integrating new habits, modifications to your food and fitness regimens. And again, just to reiterate, and I'll say this again at the end of the webinar too, that we always follow up with email about a week from now or so. It takes a little bit long for us to edit some of the recording, and then we usually have some downloadable materials to share with you as a thank you. There's also going to be a survey because we like keeping track of feedback to help us improve any of the future sessions that we put together, and also get an idea of topics that you might be interested in that we might not have had thought about. So we appreciate any and all feedback. They're usually about 5 to 10 minutes of your time, so we're always grateful for that. Okay. As I've come to learn on Google Slides, sometimes there is a delay in advancing through my slides. So we are going to just pretend like it's caught up. It looks like it's caught up. So let's talk about the objectives of our webinar today. Developing cultural competence, especially among credentialed nutrition and dietetics practitioners, is really critical to move towards eliminating health disparities in healthcare. So since so many of our attendees tend to be in or are learning about the health sciences, we've decided to take a different approach this month and incorporate perspectives both from the healthcare professional and the patient client. At the end of this webinar, we would love for you to take away the following objectives. We're sharing with you how to appreciate cultural awareness, cultural diversity, cultural sensitivity. We're going to take you on a small virtual trip around the world of foods. Then we're going to show you how to personalize your own plate. And one of the things I always like to share is to hopefully at the end of these discussions or these webinars, to have you embrace and develop new relationships with food and nutrition. So to kind of let go of old habits and be open to new ones. A little bit about me, as we have done in the past, we have two presenters today, two facilitators today. My name is Dina and I have been a registered dietitian, nutritionist, or an RDN for almost 6 years. I am based out of New York City, and I also work out of New Jersey. I have worked with various populations from high risk prenatal patients to college students as well. I'm also an adjunct lecturer, and I am a CDC trained diabetes prevention coach for the National Diabetes Prevention Program. In my previous life, I worked in meeting and event planning, as well as emergency and project management, all of which have helped me hone my organizational skills, which have come in handy when I'm helping patients and clients develop realistic and sustainable habits to help them achieve their health and wellness goals, going from point A to point Z. I'm in there to help them strategize all of that. I'm also a preceptor for nutrition students, volunteers, and dietetic interns, like my co-presenter today, Candacy, who is not just going to be co-facilitating with me, but has also put a lot of time and energy into creating this presentation. So since we are focusing on cultural awareness and taking a virtual trip around the world, I thought it'd be kind of neat just to share with you some of my own heritage, my own background. I am a first generation Italian American. Both of my parents were born and grew up in the region known as Abruzzo, Italy. If you are familiar with the shape of Italy, the country looking like a boot, my parents hailed from what would be that mid-calf region. So while the country of Italy, at least on the lower part of it, does lie on the Mediterranean Sea, where my parents grew up, what you're looking at here is a tiny mountain town in the Apennine mountain range, where our 5 food groups are bread, pasta, meat, cheese, and wine. So now I would like to hand this off to Candacy and have her introduce herself to you.
Thank you, Dina, and hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Candacy Prince, and I am a dietetic intern at Be Well Solutions Dietetic Internship. I am working with Dina, where I'm completing my wellness rotation, and I'm having a really good experience with her. I completed my undergrad at Brooklyn College here in Brooklyn, where I live. And this is my second career. I worked as an ICU technician at New York Presbyterian in Washington Heights here in New York. And I just completed my emphasis rotation, where we focus on disordered eating and eating disorders. And I love it. And this is something that I definitely want to be a part of once I graduate. So like Dina said, we're taking a trip around the world, and I just wanted to introduce where I'm from and, who we are as a people. I'm from a small country in South America, Guyana. We are the only English speaking country in that region. Our people come as a result from slavery, indentureship, and colonialism. We have 6 races. We identify as the Amerindians, who are the original people, the first people in Guyana, the Africans, East Indians, Chinese, Portuguese, and Europeans. So our food has a lot of influence from all of those regions. Food-wise, we have a lot of agriculture. We grow a lot of our own foods. So we have access to a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. We use a lot of rice and roti from our Indian ancestors, of course, who brought it to Guyana, which I consider it a blessing. We use a lot of ground provisions, and we also use a lot of fresh seafood that we have access to, and different kinds of meats, of course.
So now that we shared a little bit about us, we would love for you to chime in the chat box and share about yourself. If you don't mind typing into the chat and answering the following questions that you see on screen here. So first of all, where are you physically located? Where are you watching our webinar from? That's number 1. Number 2, do you mind sharing with us your cultural background? Maybe you were born in America, but you have history in other generations from different places from around the world, or maybe you were born outside of this region, and you can put that information in the chat as well. And then lastly, we tend to also hear in our profession, and when we talk to our patients and clients, this focus of health. What does health mean? And it is kind of a vague definition, depends on who you are, where you're coming from, your approach to those things as well. So we're going to talk in this webinar about what health is across the country, across the globe. So what does healthful eating, what does that mean to you? What are some of the factors that are included when you think about being healthy, being a healthy eater? So take your time putting it in the chat as we continue going through the next set of slides where Candacy will share with us some demographic and statistic information.
Thank you, Dina. Okay, so for this project, it was such a big topic that we just wanted to zero in on a specific area. So since Dean and I, we're from New York, we just wanted to focus on New York for a bit because New York City is so big, it's so diverse. We have people from all over here. So I thought it would be really interesting to focus on this group. So as you know, before now, I did not even realize that we had so many people, well over 8 million people in New York City. And these people live in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. And of course, you know, within these different boroughs, you have other like smaller communities. So we will begin to explore that here. Now on this slide, you can see the racial breakdown of our people. And you can see we have a large, or the majority is the white non-Hispanic population, followed by the Black and African American. As we proceed, we will see how this makeup also influences the RDs that we have to cater to our people. As I said before, we're so diverse, and you can see how our diversity displayed here. We come from over 180 countries. We have over 1,000 different cultures, more than 600 languages. And then we also have to cater for the different religions that we have here, which is more than 8. And what we also have to take into consideration, within religions, there are also different sects within those religions that we have to, you know, take into consideration when we're working with our patients and working with our clients. I'm not really sure I guess you're familiar with America is a Melting Pot. And this is something that we've been hearing for such a very long time. And we want to explore what a melting pot really is. And if this theory is something that you would consider. So we will explore the 2 different theories. So we have the melting pot, which means that the immigrants who come here, you kind of assimilate into the dominant culture, which I would say is maybe like the white culture or a Eurocentric culture. And you just kind of blend in. And in this instance, I believe you kind of lose your individuality, you kind of lose your culture, maybe your language, wherever you're from, you know, versus the salad bowl theory, which represents our diversity. And if you think about a salad, you have all these different individual ingredients, and it makes up a meal. But when you're eating your salad, you can identify your tomato, you can identify your carrots or your, you know, cucumber, you know, whatever is in that salad. So within the salad theory, you can still maintain your culture, you can still maintain your norms, and we can celebrate our own diversity. Now, when we're talking about cultural sensitivity, this is very important when we're dealing with patients. As healthcare professionals, this is something we need to keep to the forefront of our minds, because it can be the difference between reaching a patient where they are and completely losing them altogether. So cultural sensitivity is awareness that cultural differences and similarities between people and cultures can coexist without assigning them a negative or positive value. So it's not my country is better than your country, my culture is better than your culture, it's good or it's bad. It's not like that. It's also the differences and similarities among people and cultures are reflective of their values, norms, and behaviors. This will allow us to examine our own biases, right, towards others and our preconceived notions about who people are. I have an example where sometimes healthcare professionals in general may say that a patient is non-compliant because they don't adhere to certain recommendations, but sometimes we have to take into consideration our patient population. Our patients, they come from families, they come from different cultures, they subscribe to different ideas, they eat different foods, they have maybe a restriction or something because of the religion that they practice. So all of these things are example of cultural sensitivity. And the last one, most importantly, it provides a window to cultures that are not synonymous to your own. And this is extremely important because we cannot treat every patient, we cannot cater to each patient with just one standard. We all come from different places. We all have different things that we do, things that we eat. So we cannot assume that one patient is going to be able to work with the standard. We have to make accommodations around who our patients are and where they are.
Thank you, Candacy. So for example, health professionals and dietitians on social media are starting to speak out in defense of their cultural foods, as seen here in the screenshot of Dr. Kara Nayem Diop, also known as Black.Nutritionist on Instagram. And as many of us have learned in our study, so right now I'm specifically talking to those of us who might have pursued academic degrees in the health sciences or have been told by our healthcare providers, for those of you from the general population, that something like the Mediterranean diet is this gold standard for health, and that staple foods from other cultures like rice, grains, starchy foods, plantains, etc., are demonized as unhealthy. So when we're conducting our office visits, our counseling sessions, as Candacy said, with this kind of like one size fits all approach, we're really denying our patients and clients the ability to embrace their cultural foods. So the next slide here, I'm hoping that this is going to work. We've done some sound checks, and I think it will. You should be able to hear a TikTok/YouTube video about this.
Guess how many calories is in this portion of fried plantain?
My sister, who asked you? Who asked you? Nobody. It's like you woke up and you said, what can I do to Africans, Caribbean people, Hispanic people? What can I do to take away their joy this morning? That is, I want them to lament. That's what you said. Did you know that fried plantain has over 1,000 calories? Okay, we didn't know. We didn't know it. So then what do you want us to do now? So we should start frying stone. Why are you people so against happiness? That is, you choose to be an enemy of plantain for what? Our sweet beloved plantain that does not disturb anybody. If you don't know how to fry plantain, my sister just said that. Oh, no need to be cutting corners. It's better than saying such hateful and wicked things from your heart. If you don't want to eat fried plantain, that is if you want to reject the blessings of God. My sister, nobody is forcing you. Take your unhappiness and go. But please leave plantain for us. Okay? Nonsense. You can never take my joy.
Yes, you will not take our joy, you will not take our plantains. I find this video, it's extremely funny, but it's a very serious issue. And it's something that we need to address when working with our patients. There are certain things that we eat, there are certain things that we will not give up. And this is something we have to try to work with patients. And that is why I maintain that food is more than nutrition. Food is more than carbs, it's more than proteins, it's more than fats, multivitamin, it's more than all of those things, right? And food honors our cultural identities. It's who we are. like a Jamaican would say, you know, they have their own like rice and peas or whatever, wherever you're from, or maybe your borscht, whatever foods you like, that is part of your cultural identity. It represents family bonds and rites of passages, like passing down, you know, recipes from one generation to the next. And it's not also, it's not just like, you know, giving that information, but it's the ones that are formed while doing it. You know, it's something that carries you through, like from childhood to adulthood, and you're able to pass those traditions on to your own family. Food is also nostalgic and it's comforting. I mean, you can possibly think about a time when you're feeling a certain way and you remember how your mom or your grandma or your dad or whoever, you know, they cook a certain food and it makes you feel all warm inside. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel better. You know, that is what food means to, I'm sure, a lot of people, if not most people. You know, it also represents community and diversity. And what I mean about this is that even within a certain community, there are like a lot of breakdowns. So for example, like I said before, I live in Brooklyn, and the area I live in is considered like Little Caribbean, right? And we have people from different countries of the Caribbean, and they have their own food traditions. And this is something that we can be able to partake in, but we have to understand that. Food also tells a story of a culture's history. And an example of that is the soup jumeau from Haiti that they prepare for the New Year. And that is something that is held very close and dear to the Haitian community. It also represents participation, a respectful participation in other cultures. And this can be done, you know, if you have friends, you know, maybe you're invited over to partake in their meals or their maybe religious, you know, festivals. You can also, you know, visit different restaurants, you know, and try out different cultural foods around your area. So you can get a better understanding of who your people are and who your clients, who your patients are.
So obviously, we're not saying that we're completely denying healthier ways of eating. We understand that there might be some area flexibility to make some mindful choices, to improve upon certain things like cooking methods, but what we're going to talk about here, at least in this slide, part of what we're going to discuss or I'm going to share with you is possibly going to be uncomfortable, but it is a necessary conversation to have. And for those of us who have gone through some health sciences training, it's possible it goes against a lot of things that you knew or have been taught. So we want you to keep an open mind that when you're looking at something like implementing the Mediterranean diet, or as on the end of being a patient or client, being told to implement this, take this approach to your diet. This is what is known as widely accepted as a gold standard diet, something to supersede everything else that you might be eating. But adopting and promoting this actually does reflect that systemic racism. And believe it or not, it is somewhat based on biased research instead of what we're taught in school following evidence-based science. So just as an example, the Mediterranean region, like I mentioned before, where my parents are from, the Mediterranean region is actually very multicultural and multi-ethnic, exactly like what Candacy was saying too, not just in Brooklyn, but all over the globe, a lot of different diverse communities and populations. But the Mediterranean diet does lean more towards this quote unquote white people's food, and it ends up excluding a wider view of the world, potentially even marginalizing people from those non-white cultures by maintaining that this diet is normative, similar to that melting pot theory, that approach that we discussed earlier. So having people assimilate into something that is just not natural or normal for them. It has also resulted in a hyper focus on this eating plan over other cultural diets, but you're going to see in the slides to come that that doesn't really make any sense. And in order to better serve Black people, Indigenous populations, and people of color, dietary recommendations really need to become as diverse as those populations. So if you remember that slide that Candacy shared with you earlier on, which broke down those demographics and ethnicities, while the white population was a little bit more of the higher percentage, there's so many other cultures, demographics, and ethnicities to consider. So hopefully, in stepping away from just doing as we were told to do, implement this or share this with our patients and clients. And for those of you who are going to doctors' offices or dietitians sessions and being told this is the recommended approach, we really want to improve that cultural humility among healthcare professionals and ensure a more well-rounded approach to research as well, and to promote a more evidence-based dietary perspective instead of kind of slapping on this one size fits all.
Thank you, Dina. So for this slide and the upcoming slide, we just wanted to make a comparison between the different countries, a few countries around the world, and their food pyramid, or an example of maybe their healthy plate, what a healthy plate for them would look like. And if you can see in both diagrams here from Benin, which is in West Africa, and then we have Japan, we can see that both countries, they have a copious amount of fruits and vegetables. They have the same seafood, but you can see they may have like different fruits and vegetables. And that's important to understand because it makes you think about what is accessible. And accessibility, it's very important when you think about making recommendations to clients and to your patients. What is in their area? What can they afford? What foods are they accustomed eating? Okay. Over here, we have a comparison, or we can just look at Sweden and Venezuela and the approach that they take to to include these things. So for Sweden, they just went like straight to it, like you include more fruits and vegetables, you switch to whole grains, and consuming less processed meat and alcohol and sugar, etc. But what I love about Venezuela, if you can take a good look at it, they have two pyramids or two sets of provisions. Now, the first one is for the general population, where they have, the fruits and vegetables, dairy, etc. But they also took into consideration the first people, the people who live off the land. And as you can see, they have a completely different diet. They may eat different types of proteins. They have different types of sources of carbohydrates. They have different types of fruits. So all of this, it means what is accessible to your patient. What are they eating? What foods are they eating from their culture? And what I wanted to say, even though a person may come to a different country, you long for your own food, even though you may have a lot more variety or whatever, you long for your own food. So it's not easy to say or to omit somebody's cultural food altogether. You can't. Thank you. So this is an example of the variety of different breakfasts, lunches, and dinner across the world. And these are just a few examples. We have from the Middle East, Nigeria, the Philippines, North India, Mexico, Greece, France, Brazil, and Barbados. And what I really wanted to show here, how different our meals can look throughout the day. And sometimes for one person may say, okay, I can have maybe oatmeal and coffee, orange juice, or whatever. But somebody else from a different part of the world may have a heartier breakfast. For instance, in the Middle East, this is fava beans, right? And in some other cultures, beans would be something for lunch. Take, for example, the Philippine breakfast. A lot of people would say, well, rice or maybe in a different part of the Caribbean, for example, they say, well, rice is maybe for lunch, or we can try it for dinner. And the same thing, everybody is different. And this is something we need to take into consideration, and these meals can be interchangeable throughout the day. So when we're making recommendations as nurses, as doctors and dietitians, we have to take our the patient's country of origin and what they're accustomed eating. Of course, you make recommendations, to address them individually, but this is something that we have to look at and should be at the forefront of our minds.
Thanks, Candacy. I know as you had created this slide, we were talking about that whole personalize your plate. So, it's not something that looks familiar to those of us who grew up in the United States. I often tend to tell people, think outside the cereal box, because your breakfast could be last night's fish dinner. It doesn't have to just be oatmeal and cereal all the time. So to be able to take a look at all of these healthy options that are traditional to people's foodways is, again, very eye-opening if you've never seen something like this in other people's cultures. So thanks for putting that together. So many of our webinars as attendees, as I mentioned earlier, do tend to be in or studying the health sciences. Others who are here today as well are part of the general population. But I'm going to assume that all of us have been to doctors or specialists at some point in our lives. So I just wanted to start off by sharing a little bit of our profession's background, being a dietitian, what this means. And I was able to borrow this graphic that you see on screen from our colleague, Food and Fearless. While we are starting to see a small shift in the field, there are over 110,000 registered dietitian nutritionists right now in the United States. You can compare this to about 1 million medical doctors and about 2 million registered nurses. This graphic here shows just how far we still have to go in this arena. We do recognize that representation matters in healthcare, and it is important for all of us to value and recognize the varied perspectives and cultural backgrounds of our patients and clients, but also, diet plays a really big role in the prevention and management of chronic health diseases. So we want to work with people who are going to want to work with us. If we don't necessarily accommodate that, or if we are not representative of that person's culture, and just in the case of what you're seeing on here with 80-something% of dietitians being white, and usually white women, it's a little hard for us to put on different hats, but it's really about helping develop an understanding of how we can meet people where they're at. So how do we make this happen? We try to keep this global view in front of mind. We try to broaden our perspectives and our approaches as healthcare providers. And we also try to let our patients feel seen and heard, not to be made to be felt demonized for their traditional food ways and lifestyles, as you saw in that funny clip we played earlier. So here's a checklist of what to do next. If you are a healthcare professional or a dietitian, we want you to, as I think Candacy mentioned earlier, take a look around your community, whether you're working someplace or you're living someplace. Go, especially in New York City, we have what's called bodegas here, these little corner store marts where people go to buy their groceries, and other kinds of food markets. I am an adjunct lecturer. One of our classes assignments, one of the classes that I teach is Global Foods, Food Society and Health. And that's actually one of the assignments we have for our students. Go out and visit a neighborhood that is not your own and check out what's different or the same as your own culture or your own community. If you don't have access to different communities, bodegas, and food markets, then you can go to a restaurant. Tons of restaurants across the country that focus on specific food or cultural foods. If you're on social media, which I know a lot of us are, while I want to get a little bit less on social media these days, I really think it's important to follow a diverse group of people. And that goes both ways. We'll share a little bit more on the next slide about, patient advocacy. But as far as healthcare professionals go, we always tell our patients and our clients, diversify your diet, create a well-balanced meal, make sure you're supporting your healthy gut microbiome. Same thing goes for our own perspectives. The more people you're surrounded by, the more experiences that you have, the more interaction and engagement you have. I think it really does help you strengthen your own approaches and maybe even your own perspectives on things. Test out new ingredients, flavors, and recipes. So maybe you've never tried a plantain before. Maybe you've never tried sazon seasoning in certain dishes that you've made. Check out some of these things and see what you think. This way you come from a place of reference, a frame of reference. In addition to that, be sure that when you're sitting with your clientele that you avoid labeling foods as good versus bad, right? Again, I mentioned before, we're not necessarily denying that there could be some healthful improvements and modifications made in people's diets, but we don't want to associate or demonize any foods. We don't want people coming away with emotional attachments to their making bad choices, therefore they are a bad person. And we also want to make sure that they're coming back to us, because who's going to want to come see you if you're talking smack about somebody? I also think that it's helpful to examine your own biases. So be reflective on that. When you know better, you do better. And, you know, a lot of the things that we were talking earlier in the webinar today may make you feel uncomfortable. If you found yourself rolling your eyes because I ended up saying the word racism, I would really invite you to process that and find out why that might be an issue for you. So, for example, if you've never been made to feel less than, dismissed, or demoralized at a doctor's or dietitian's visit, then consider yourself fortunate and privileged. You can create a more supportive environment for your patients and clients when you open up your mind to be able to meet them again where they're at and understand where they're coming from. If you're working on, so for professional people only here, if you're working on your CEUs, right, we have these things in the dietetics profession. Every 5 years, we have to maintain 75 continuing education units, professional development. Consider taking, or your facility or membership organization might actually even require you to take trainings that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then on the patient's end, if you are a patient or client, and or if you're coming from a place, even if you're in the healthcare profession, but your own doctor is treating you in a certain way, if you're ready, getting ready to schedule your own visit, your next visit, we want to make sure that we're empowering you and advocating for you. So again, and I realize this might also come from a place of privilege. You might not have the luxury to pick and choose who you're working with, depending on the restrictions with your health insurance, but odds are you can probably look up who you're meeting with. There's probably a website where somebody has maybe their own practice, or there might be a group facility or a clinic setting where they're going to meet the staff. And if you feel like you're engaging with somebody, even just by looking at them, this is somebody who seems like they would get what I'm going for, or understand my background, my cultural heritage, looks like me, that's something that you might want to consider when you're scheduling appointments. You can also request that your provider communicates with you in your preferred language. So if they don't speak it themselves, they can arrange to have professional interpretation. I definitely encourage people, try to give a lot of information about your background too. Share your spiritual and religious practices, share your dietary considerations and those norms that you're following, because on the receiving end, we might not know. You might not be telling us things and we're coming at it, in kind of like an awkward relationships, but the more we know, the more we can open up and help you with making those informed decisions. Make sure that you're being treated fairly and feeling listened to. Speak up or report any inappropriate or insensitive encounters. And I'm not just talking about going onto Yelp. I'm talking about finding out what the board is, where you can make these claims or submit issues that you might have up the chain. And then last but not least, if you're not happy with your provider or the clinic, go to another one if you have the option to do so. Try people around. This is, again, it has to be something that's a supportive and mutually beneficial relationship. You deserve being able to be in that environment that is respectful. So if ever is the case that somebody is dismissing you, making you feel less than, then please make sure that you reach out and see if you can get additional support someplace else, because you deserve that. And so on that note, as we're wrapping up with the rest of these slides here, if you registered for this webinar, whether you attended live or not, please keep an eye out for our follow-up email, like I mentioned earlier, where we will be sending everyone in about the coming week or so. It usually takes me a few days to get all of this together. And that will include a link of the recording of the session, a free downloadable worksheet. I've learned my lesson in the past, so I'm going to copy paste right now in the chat. This is the feedback survey. If you feel like clicking on it right now, opening it up on your computer, please feel free. We would love to hear back from you, but that link will also be in the email to come. And then we're also working on, my interns are fantastic. I mean, they're always helping support me and all of my big and bright ideas in things that I want to pursue, because the more we can reach, the broader audience we can reach, hopefully the better our health outcomes are. So one of the things that we're doing, in addition to future webinars that we have ongoing pretty much every month, usually it's on the second Wednesday of the month, but this time we had to move it because your girl here was not ready. And we're also putting together online courses, because this way you can kind of work as a self-paced, in a self-paced environment where there are a variety of different conditions, or even just like, gaining more healthful lifestyle recommendations, or how to prepare a meal plan for yourself. And so those are not officially launched just yet, but we're working on them. And then once they're out there, we hope that that is an affordable service that we can provide, where it's $28 for 28 days. It's over the course of a month. Every week you get a different video module and a little homework assignment. And then we also have an engaging group for support. So there's either a Facebook group affiliated or a Slack app group that we refer to. And then of course, I come in as needed for a little one-on-one type of thing if there's anything that you need in addition to that. So please consider those things in the future. It really helps us do what we do. We would also love for you to stay in touch with us. So please share our contact information, social media accounts. If you're not following us already, please follow, with anyone in your circles who might benefit from what we have to offer. Like I said, this webinar today was a little bit of a standalone. We really talked a little bit more to the healthcare professionals, but we also included that patient advocacy portion of our discussion. In the future, we have a little bit more general awareness topics, but you can pick and choose what it is that you want to come and hang out and listen to us. If you are in need of nutrition counseling, again, I'm going to put this in the chat box here as well. You can often I'm sorry, I can't talk and type at the same time, obviously. So this is what's called a discovery call, right? Just like I said before, I might not be the one for you. Or if you have people that you want to refer me to, I might not be who they're looking for. So I always set up a discovery call with people, 15 minutes, just to kind of get to know what they're looking for, what my approach is, because again, my approach might be different than what they're used to with their other healthcare providers. And then moving forward from there, we can figure out, do we meet on a weekly basis, once a month? Are you trying to manage a chronic condition, or are you just trying to gain some, other healthful lifestyle habits? And we might need to meet a little bit less frequently. You can also connect with both Candacy and I am putting in the chat here to our LinkedIn contact information. So feel free to click on that and make friends with us on LinkedIn. And lastly, I am not above asking for donations, because every little bit helps in creating, not only, I should say, creating this free content for all of you. I mean, I do this out of the goodness of my heart, whether you paid for it or not, but it really does help us make our services more accessible and affordable to others. So, whatever we can get in for people who can afford it, we can then implement and do pro bono sessions or more affordable types of services for people who are unable to afford it. And I sometimes offer small stipends to our interns and volunteers, like I treat them to lunch and, just as a thank you, because all of these people do all of this for free. And it's nice to know that I can at least give back in some way, not out of my pocket. But again, like I said, I do this no matter what. If you're giving me money, cool. If you don't want to give me money, that's okay. And again, awkward to talk about stuff like this, but we should normalize asking for money. Okay, so on that note, before I open up, so I'm going to check through the chat to see if anybody had any questions or comments, and I'll check through the chat there, that if in case you asked anything during the presentation that I haven't been able to address. I do want to thank all of you so much for, and I see some repeat customers here, for attending. And I also want to give an extra special thanks to Candacy for putting her blood, sweat, and tears in this in the last few weeks, putting this all together. So let us, I'll advance through here just to share some references at a glance. This will also be included in your follow-up materials, but I'm going to stop sharing our slides for now so I can hopefully see some faces on screen. And let's take a look at any feedback that we got in the chat. So feel free, we have a few, about 13 minutes or so before the official end of the webinar. If anybody would like to chime in, if you want to raise your hand and be unmuted. Hi, Fatima. I see some of my students here, my former students. Hello, hello. Let's take a look at the chat. Wow, from across the globe. Oh, that's lovely. Fatima, you're from Nigeria, West Africa, came to the US in 2016. Hi, Tristan from Ohio with an Irish and German heritage. Lots of potatoes and beer. Exactly. Yeah, healthful eating, right? That phrase from Michael Pollan of eat food, not too much, mostly plants. That's a great quote. Cassie, welcome from Brooklyn and family from Haiti. Thank you, thank you. Karen from Mexico, living in New York, quite the global reach. Latrice, thank you for watching from Westchester, born in New York, but roots in the Bahamas and Panama. Danielle from Miami, currently in Connecticut. Thank you, Danielle. I know you've been, Danielle, just a side note, Danielle and Cassie are also co-interning at the same time that Candacy is, and they're all working on a bunch of different things themselves. So I am very, very fortunate and grateful to be playing a small role in the interns' lives here, their journey. Let's take a look here. Laura, suffer in New York, ancestors from Eastern Europe, healthy eating, meaning variety of colorful foods, no good or bad foods, right? We talked about that too in the last couple of slides. Eating in moderation unless contraindicated for other reasons. Thank you. Right. Hilarious on that YouTube clip. Yep, exactly. Let's see, anything very informative. You're very welcome. So is there anything that we can address or anything that we haven't addressed? If you'd like to put in the chat box now, please feel free to do so. I'll wait another minute. If not, I'm going to end our session today. Again, thanking all of you for coming, joining us, supporting us, just being a part of this. And also, again, if you can fill out that survey and let us know what you enjoyed, what other topics you might be interested in, because we have a large library of information that we'd love to share with you, but we want to make it relevant. What's most important to you. So thanks everybody so much. And we will see you again, hopefully in the next month's webinar. Bye.